In the dim light of dawn, the world was painted in soft hues of orange and pink, the sun just beginning to rise over the sleepy suburban neighborhood. Birds chirped lazily, and the morning dew glistened like tiny diamonds on the grass. And if you like the story, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Amidst this tranquil scene, a scruffy dog named Max trotted along the familiar path of his morning routine. His fur was a mixture of brown and white, with a patch over one eye that gave him a unique charm. Max was not just any dog, he was known in the neighborhood for his playful antics and friendly demeanor. Children often stopped to pat him on the head, and he would wag his tail in delight, soaking up the attention. But today, something felt different as he sniffed at the fresh smells that wafted through the air. Max paused at the front of a quiet house. He could hear the faint sound of rustling nearby, and his ears perked up in curiosity. The house was a charming one-story structure with a white picket fence and a swing set in the yard, which was now eerily still. The flowers, once vibrant, looked as if they hadn't been watered in days. Max tilted his head, sensing something was off. With his instinct kicking in, he decided to investigate. He trotted closer to the porch, where he noticed something unusual tucked away in the shadows. As he approached, his heart raced with excitement, but also with an unease he couldn't quite place. There, nestled against the porch railing, lay a tiny baby wrapped in a soft, colorful blanket. The baby looked peaceful, her little face serene in the morning light. Max's tail stopped wagging, and he felt a surge of protective instincts rise within him. He approached cautiously, sniffing the air and the ground around the baby, searching for any signs of danger or distress. Max nudged the baby gently with his nose, hoping to rouse her from her slumber. To his relief, she stirred slightly but did not cry. Instead, she opened her eyes, which were bright and curious, and looked right at him. Max felt an overwhelming urge to help. This baby needed him, and he knew he had to do something. His instincts as a loyal companion and protector kicked in. With a few soft whines, he tried to get her attention. But the baby merely smiled, oblivious to the world around her, as if she was simply enjoying the warmth of the sun. The realization hit Max hard: she was alone, without anyone to care for her. He glanced around, hoping to see someone coming to check on the baby, but the street remained deserted. Fear gripped Max's heart as he realized that time was of the essence. He barked loudly, hoping to attract the attention of anyone nearby. His barks echoed in the stillness, bouncing off the nearby houses. Each bark was filled with urgency as he called out for help. He thought of the children from the neighborhood who played with him every day and how they would surely come to investigate the noise. But minutes passed, and still, no one appeared. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, making him feel helpless. Max looked back at the baby, who cooed softly, unfazed by the barking. She was so small and innocent, and he couldn't bear the thought of leaving her there. What should I do? He thought desperately. He remembered the friendly officers he had seen patrolling the neighborhood, their kind faces making him feel safe. Maybe they could help. The police station was not too far away, and if anyone could provide assistance, it would be them. Gathering every ounce of courage he had, Max decided he would take the baby to the police. He had to be brave, just like he was when he chased after the squirrels in the park. With determination in his heart, Max carefully picked up the edge of the blanket in his mouth, ensuring he didn't disturb the baby. He looked around one last time, his instincts guiding him as he navigated the path to the street. Every step felt like a small victory as he maneuvered around the front yard, dodging the flower beds and the low-hanging branches of the trees. He had a mission now, a purpose that propelled him forward. The weight of the baby was both a challenge and a motivation. He felt responsible for her safety, and that responsibility ignited a fire within him. Max made his way to the sidewalk, glancing left and right. The world around him buzzed with the sounds of morning, the distant hum of traffic, the faint laughter of children waking up for school, and the chirping of birds celebrating the new day. But for Max, the only sound that mattered was the soft breathing of the baby, reassuring him that she was still safe. He picked up his pace, sprinting toward the police station. His heart raced with excitement, not only because he was on an important mission, but also because he felt a sense of pride. He was a hero in the making. As he neared the police station, Max spotted the tall building looming ahead. The big blue sign with white letters reading police seemed to shine like a beacon of hope. His paws pounded the pavement, and with every step, he felt more resolute. Max's instincts told him he was doing the right thing, that he was meant to be here at this moment, and he refused to let anything distract him. He could already imagine the officers rushing out to help the baby, just as they would when someone called for assistance. Max's heart soared with anticipation, but then a wave of worry washed over him. What if they didn't believe him? What if they thought he was just a dog carrying a blanket? Would they understand the urgency of the situation? But deep down, he knew he had to try. He had to trust in his ability to convey the seriousness of the moment. With one last burst of energy, he bolted up the steps of the police station and came to an abrupt stop at the entrance. The moment he arrived, he barked furiously, trying to capture the attention of the officers inside. His barks echoed off the walls, bouncing back to him as if urging him to keep going. He could see through the glass doors that officers were busy behind the desks, taking reports and answering phone calls. Max felt a surge of hope. They had to notice him, they had to come outside. Finally, the door swung open, and Officer Martinez stepped out, a confused expression on his face. The officer looked down at Max, eyes widening as he saw the baby blanket draped across the dog's mouth. "What on earth?" Officer Martinez exclaimed, rushing toward him. Max wagged his tail, letting the blanket drop as the officer approached. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins, the relief of finally having someone who could help. In that moment, Max realized he had done something extraordinary. He had taken action when no one else was there. He had become a protector, and now he was delivering the most important message of his life. As Officer Martinez knelt down to inspect the baby, Max felt a warmth spread through him. He had made it, they were safe now. Max remembers the warmth of the sun on his fur as he plays in the backyard with his owner, Sarah. She was a kind girl with bright blue eyes and a giggle that could make any dog's tail wag. Together, they would spend hours chasing after balls and running through the tall grass. Sarah always had a special treat for Max after their games, a crunchy dog biscuit that he loved more than anything else. Those afternoons filled Max with joy, and he often felt like the happiest dog in the world. But now, in the chill of the early morning, Max finds himself in a very different situation. The sweet smells of blooming flowers are replaced by the sharp scent of fear that lingers in the air. He feels the weight of his responsibility, knowing that he is the only one who can help this tiny, vulnerable baby. Max glances at the baby once more, her tiny fingers wrapped tightly around the blanket. She stirs slightly but does not cry. There's an urgency in Max's heart, a call to action that he cannot ignore. With a determined bark, Max scans the neighborhood. He remembers the days when Sarah would call him her brave protector, how he'd chase away the squirrels that dared to enter their yard. Today, he feels a surge of that same bravery. He knows he must do something. He can't let this baby stay outside alone any longer. But what can a dog do? His instincts kick in, urging him to take charge of the situation. He thinks back to the training sessions he had with Sarah, where she taught him to listen and respond to commands. "You're my good boy, Max," she would say, rewarding him with affection and treats whenever he obeyed. He takes a deep breath, reminding himself that even though he's just a dog, he can still be a hero. In his heart, he believes that if he could help Sarah, then he could certainly help this little girl. With a strong sense of purpose, Max approaches the baby again, giving her a gentle nudge with his nose. This time, she opens her eyes, blinking up at him with a confused look. Max feels a rush of warmth. She's alive and needs him. As he watches her, Max notices that the baby's face is dirty and her clothes are slightly torn, making his heart ache. How did she end up here? He wonders. Where is her family? And if you like the story, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Max shakes off his worry. He can't dwell on those questions right now. Time is of the essence. He glances back at the street, remembering the training Sarah had instilled in him to be careful and watch for dangers. Without hesitation, Max decides he must find help. He knows that the local police station is not far from here. It's a place he's seen Sarah visit often, where she would smile and chat with the officers who always petted him. He picks up the blanket with his teeth, trying to carry it carefully so the baby stays snug. He glances back at her, ensuring she's safe before heading toward the street. With the blanket in his mouth, Max feels like a knight in shining armor on a mission. As he approaches the edge of the yard, he can hear the distant sounds of cars zooming by. The world feels big and scary, but he knows he must be brave. "I'm coming, little one," he seems to say with every determined step he takes. The baby coos softly, and Max feels a spark of hope. Perhaps she knows they are on their way to safety. The sidewalk is uneven, and Max has to navigate around the cracks and patches of grass that spill into the path. He is careful not to trip or stumble as he carries the precious cargo. Every sound around him, distant laughter, barking dogs, and the rumble of engines, makes him more aware of the urgency of his task. As he reaches the street, he looks both ways, recalling the lessons Sarah taught him about crossing safely. With the blanket still held gently in his mouth, he trots to the other side, feeling a rush of triumph. But then, the challenge begins. Cars whiz by, the noise and speed making his heart race. Max hesitates for a moment, feeling the rush of fear. What if I get hit, he thinks, but he shakes his head. I can't let that happen to her. His resolve strengthens, and he watches for a break in traffic. Finally, he sees an opening, and he makes a dash for it, feeling the cool morning air rush past him. Once on the other side, Max pauses to catch his breath, glancing back to see if the baby is all right. She appears calm, still bundled tightly in the blanket, and he feels a sense of relief wash over him. He continues on, his paws pattering against the pavement as he picks up speed. The police station looms ahead, a familiar building that seems to glow with promise. As he approaches the station, Max's heart pounds with excitement. He can see a few officers outside, chatting and laughing together. They will know what to do, he thinks. He knows they are good people who care for the community and help others. He remembers how Sarah always felt safe knowing the police were there to protect them. Today, they would be his allies too. Max races up to the entrance, barking loudly to get their attention. The officers turn, surprised to see a dog carrying a blanket in his mouth. One officer, a tall man with kind eyes, kneels down to Max's level. "Hey there, buddy. What do you have?" he asks, leaning closer. Max drops the blanket at the officer's feet, panting heavily. The officer's eyes widen as he spots the baby nestled within the folds of the blanket. "Oh my gosh," he exclaims, quickly scooping the baby into his arms. "What happened here?" Max barks again, wagging his tail furiously, trying to convey the urgency of the situation. The officer's expression shifts from surprise to concern. "We need to get her inside." As they rush into the station, Max follows closely behind, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Inside, the atmosphere is bustling, and Max can sense the seriousness of the situation. Officers gather around, trying to assess the baby's condition and figure out what to do next. "Where did she come from?" one officer asks, looking down at the tiny girl in disbelief. "She was outside a house just down the street," the tall officer explains, glancing back at Max, who is now sitting obediently by the door. "This dog found her and brought her here." Max feels a swell of pride at being recognized for his actions. He barks again, encouraging the officers to take action. They quickly check the baby for any signs of distress, feeling relieved when they see she appears healthy despite being abandoned. "Let's call social services and see if we can track down her family," another officer suggests. "We need to ensure she's safe and secure." Max watches intently as the officers move with purpose, ready to take on the challenge of protecting the little girl. He feels a connection to her, a bond that goes beyond just being a dog. He understands what it means to be cared for, to be loved and protected. Today, he is her guardian angel. With the officers' diligent work, the atmosphere in the station transforms from panic to determination. Max knows he has done something significant. He has saved a life today. As the officers make phone calls and discuss their next steps, Max settles down near the entrance, keeping a watchful eye on the baby and the officers. He remembers all the times Sarah had praised him for being a good boy, for being brave. Today, I've shown my bravery, Max thinks, his tail thumping against the floor in satisfaction. The baby coos softly again, and Max feels a warmth in his heart. The officers continue their work, and soon, the chatter in the room grows louder as they receive information about the baby's family. The sense of urgency remains high, but so does the hope. Max's ears perk up as he overhears snippets of conversation, and he feels proud to be part of this important moment. In that busy police station, surrounded by the people dedicated to making a difference, Max knows he's found his purpose. He may be just a dog, but today, he feels like a hero. His heart swells with pride as he realizes that sometimes the smallest actions can lead to the biggest changes. Max looks around, feeling the love and determination in the room. He can sense that together, they will ensure that this baby is safe, that she will find a loving home. And in the process, Max has proven that he is more than just a pet. He is a brave protector, a friend, and now, a hero to a baby who needed him most. Max sprinted down the street, determination fueling his every step. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a warm golden glow over the quiet suburban neighborhood. The sounds of morning were all around him, the distant chirping of birds, the soft rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, and the rhythmic hum of engines as cars sped by. But none of that mattered to Max right now. All he could think about was the baby. The weight of her tiny life felt heavy in his heart, pushing him to move faster. He glanced back, making sure the baby was still securely nestled in the blanket he had carefully picked up. Her little face peeked out, and Max felt a surge of responsibility wash over him. He wasn't just a scruffy mutt anymore, he was a protector. Each time he saw the flicker of her eyelids or heard the soft cooing sound escape her lips, it motivated him to press on. He had to reach the police station. After all, they were the ones who could help. Dodging the morning traffic, Max darted across the street, his instincts sharper than ever. Cars zoomed past, their drivers unaware of the heroic mission unfolding before them. Max's paws hit the pavement with urgency, the rough concrete beneath him a stark contrast to the soft grass of the yard he had just left. He weaved through parked cars, his heart racing in tandem with his legs. He could sense the urgency in the air, and it fueled him further. With every step, Max could feel the cool morning air brushing against his fur. He focused intently on the path ahead, determined not to let anything distract him from his goal. The police station loomed closer now, its imposing facade a beacon of hope in the distance. As he neared the building, the reality of the situation washed over him again. He was carrying a baby, a tiny human who needed help, and he was going to deliver her safely. He could see the front doors of the police station, and his heart swelled with hope. Max's pace quickened, and he barked excitedly, eager to announce his arrival. But what would the officers think? Would they understand the urgency of his mission? Would they realize that this wasn't just a random delivery but a life that needed saving? Doubts flitted through his mind, but he pushed them aside. He had come this far, he couldn't give up now. As he reached the entrance, Max paused for a brief moment, catching his breath. He glanced back one last time at the peaceful neighborhood he had just run through, at the house where the baby had been left alone. A surge of anger bubbled up inside him, directed at whoever had abandoned her. How could someone be so careless? In that moment, he vowed to do everything in his power to protect her from any further harm. With renewed resolve, Max bounded forward and barked at the police station's doors, his tail wagging furiously. He could feel the energy of the place, a sense of authority and safety. As if sensing his urgency, a few officers stepped out to see what all the commotion was about. Their eyes widened as they took in the sight of Max, panting and agitated, with a baby blanket trailing behind him. "Hey there, buddy," one officer called out, bending down slightly to get a better look. "What have you got there?" Max could feel his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. He dropped the blanket at the officer's feet, revealing the precious baby bundled inside. The baby cooed softly, her little hand peeking out from the blanket, and Max could see the officer's expression change from curiosity to shock. "Oh my gosh," the officer exclaimed, kneeling down further. "Where did you find her?" Max barked again, as if trying to explain everything in one loud, desperate sound. He wagged his tail, urging the officers to understand the urgency of the situation. They needed to take action fast. Within moments, more officers joined them, forming a small crowd around Max and the baby. Officer Martinez, who had been working the morning shift, stepped forward, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. "What do we have here?" he asked, his brow furrowing as he tried to piece together the situation. Max could feel the weight of their attention, and he stood tall, wagging his tail as if to say, "I found her. Please help." The officers exchanged glances, and Max sensed that they were beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. As Officer Martinez carefully lifted the baby from the blanket, he examined her closely. "She looks safe, but we need to get her checked out," he said, his tone serious yet gentle. "We can't leave her here." Max felt a rush of relief. Finally, they were taking action. He watched intently as Officer Martinez cradled the baby in his arms, his protective instincts flaring up even more. They were going to help her. They had to. "Let's get inside and figure out what's going on," Officer Martinez said, heading toward the police station. Max followed closely, feeling a sense of pride swell within him. He had brought the baby to the right place, and he wouldn't leave her side. Inside, the station was bustling with activity. Officers moved swiftly between desks, answering phones and handling paperwork. But all eyes were now on Max and the baby. The sight of a dog delivering a baby was unusual, to say the least, and the curiosity of the officers fueled a sense of urgency in the air. As Officer Martinez gently placed the baby on a nearby table, he called for the station's medical personnel to come and take a look. "We need to make sure she's okay," he said, his voice steady but concerned. Max stood by, watching closely, ready to protect the baby at all costs. The officers began to ask questions, trying to piece together what had happened. "Did anyone see who left her there?" one officer asked. Max could feel the tension building. If only he could explain what he had witnessed, if only he could tell them that he had seen her alone and scared. "Max, you did great," Officer Martinez said, kneeling down to pet him. "You found her and brought her to us. You're a hero, buddy." Max wagged his tail proudly, feeling validated for his efforts. This wasn't just a random act, he had saved a life. Suddenly, an officer burst into the room, holding a cell phone. "We've got a 911 call from a neighbor who heard a baby crying outside," he announced, his face serious. They didn't see anything, but they thought it was strange. Max's ears perked up. This was it. They might find out who had left the baby. The officers quickly gathered around the table, forming a plan to investigate. "We need to check the area," Officer Martinez said, looking around at his fellow officers. "If someone abandoned this baby, we need to find them." Max felt a rush of adrenaline. They were going to get to the bottom of this. He was ready to help in any way he could. He could almost smell the determination in the air, and it fueled his desire to protect the baby. As the officers prepared to leave the station, Max followed closely, his heart racing. He had taken the first step in getting help, but now he wanted to ensure that the baby was safe. The world outside felt vast and intimidating, but he was determined to keep her safe. Officer Martinez turned to Max and said, "You stay close, boy. We're going to find out who did this." Max felt a surge of pride. He was part of something bigger than himself now. He was part of a team dedicated to protecting the innocent. As they stepped outside into the bright sunlight, Max felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was ready for whatever lay ahead, and he would do everything he could to help the baby find her way home. With the police at his side, he knew they were a force to be reckoned with. The neighborhood was buzzing with activity as officers interviewed neighbors and gathered information. Max walked beside Officer Martinez, his keen senses alert for any sign of danger or clues about the baby's origins. The police were asking questions, and Max watched intently, hoping they would get the answers they needed. "Did anyone see anything unusual last night?" Officer Martinez asked a nearby resident, who shook his head. "I heard a baby crying but didn't think much of it." Max's ears perked up at that. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Maybe someone had seen something after all. He stood by the officer's side, watching closely as they gathered more information. Hours passed, and the investigation unfolded. Max remained vigilant, his eyes scanning the neighborhood, ready to jump into action at a moment's notice. He felt a bond growing between him and Officer Martinez, a partnership built on trust and determination. Then, suddenly, a breakthrough came. One officer burst onto the scene, breathless and excited. "We found a witness." A woman who lives a few houses down claimed she saw someone leave the baby on the porch. The news electrified the crowd, and Max's heart raced with anticipation. "Take me to her," Officer Martinez commanded, his eyes focused. Max felt a surge of hope. This was it. They might finally uncover the truth. As they rushed toward the witness's house, Max kept pace, determined to see this through to the end. As they approached, the witness, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stood on her porch, looking worried. "I saw a car parked outside late last night," she explained. "Then I saw someone drop the baby off and leave quickly. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think much of it at the time." "Did you see what kind of car it was?" Officer Martinez pressed, his expression serious. The woman thought for a moment. "Yes, it was a dark-colored SUV, I believe. I didn't get a good look at the driver, but they seemed in a hurry." Max's heart sank. It was clear that the situation was more complicated than he had hoped. The officers took notes and assured her they would follow up on the lead. As they walked back toward the police station, Max felt a mixture of emotions. They were getting closer, but the uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Would they find the person responsible? Would the baby ever know the warmth of a loving family? With the sun setting in the distance, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Max remained steadfast by Officer Martinez's side. He had found the baby, and now he was determined to help find her family. He was a part of something important, and together, they were going to make a difference. And as he trotted beside the officers, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that every bark, every wag of his tail, was a step toward justice for the baby he had saved. Back to the present, Max, the scruffy dog with a heart full of courage, stood at the police station's entrance, panting heavily. His paws were muddy from the journey, but he didn't care. All that mattered was the tiny baby he had just found, still safe in her blanket. He barked furiously, a mix of desperation and determination resonating in his voice. The sound echoed against the brick walls of the station, drawing the attention of Officer Martinez, who was taking a rare moment to sip his coffee. Officer Martinez, a kind but weary cop with deep-set eyes that had seen too much in his years on the force, looked up from his cup just as Max's barking reached a frantic pitch. He squinted, trying to make sense of the scene unfolding before him. "What on earth?" he exclaimed, his heart quickening as he rushed outside. The sight that met his eyes was astonishing, a scruffy dog standing proudly in front of the station, a baby blanket hanging from his mouth, and a soft cooing sound coming from within it. Max stood tall, tail wagging but still alert. He dropped the blanket at Officer Martinez's feet, and there, nestled inside, was the tiny face of a baby girl, her big, curious eyes blinking at the bright daylight. She was bundled in a pink blanket that had somehow remained spotless despite being outside. The sight struck Officer Martinez like a bolt of lightning, and he bent down, concern etched across his face. "Oh, my goodness! Where did you come from?" he said, gently scooping the baby into his arms. As he cradled her, Officer Martinez noticed that she was perfectly healthy, with chubby cheeks and tiny fingers that wrapped around his thumb. The warmth of her tiny body against him brought a wave of relief. She was unharmed. Max, sensing the calmness that had settled over the scene, sat down on his haunches, his ears perked up as if waiting for orders. Stay here, buddy. You did a great job, Officer Martinez praised, patting Max on the head. The dog responded with a soft whimper, proud of his accomplishment. His instincts had led him to do the right thing, and now the baby was safe in the arms of a police officer. Max couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment wash over him, as if he had fulfilled a mission far greater than himself. Inside the police station, the atmosphere shifted. Other officers, drawn by the commotion, began to gather around. Curiosity sparked in their eyes as they approached Officer Martinez. "What's going on?" asked Officer Jenkins, a burly man with a warm smile. When he saw the baby, his expression changed from curiosity to shock. "Where did you find her?" he asked, kneeling to get a closer look. "Outside on the porch of that house down the street," Officer Martinez explained, gesturing toward the door. "This dog found her and brought her here." He looked down at Max, who was now wagging his tail proudly. "Can you believe that? This little guy saved her." "Good boy, Max," another officer cheered, kneeling down to scratch the dog behind the ears. Max licked the officer's hand in response, feeling the warmth of the camaraderie. He had been recognized, and it felt good. But amidst the praises and the joy of finding the baby, a heavy concern hung in the air. "Do we know where she came from? How did she end up out there?" Officer Jenkins asked, his voice serious. The room quieted, and Officer Martinez's expression grew more grave. "We need to find out who left her," he said, the urgency in his voice returning. "This isn't just a lost child, we need to figure out what happened." The officers began to mobilize, quickly brainstorming the next steps. Officer Martinez laid the baby down gently on a clean blanket brought from the supply closet, ensuring she was comfortable. He knew they had to act quickly, the baby's well-being depended on it. "We'll check for any surveillance cameras in the area." "Someone must have seen something," he directed, already reaching for the phone to contact the nearby businesses. Max watched as the officers sprang into action, feeling an unexpected surge of pride. This was his moment, the time when he could show everyone just how important he was. He had found the baby, and now he would help protect her, just as he had always wanted to protect his owner. He sat alert, eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger, ready to bark if anything felt amiss. As the officers worked, Officer Martinez took a moment to bond with the baby, gently stroking her forehead. "You're safe now, little one," he whispered softly, trying to soothe her. She gurgled happily, the sound filling the room with warmth. He smiled down at her, feeling a sense of responsibility wash over him. It wasn't just about solving a case, it was about ensuring this child's future. "Let's make sure we take good care of her," Officer Martinez instructed his fellow officers. "We need to find a social worker who can help until we can get her back to her family." His voice was firm, and the other officers nodded in agreement. They knew that the real work was just beginning. Meanwhile, Max felt the tension in the room. The officers were serious, and he could sense the urgency. He trotted over to Officer Martinez, nudging his leg with his nose, trying to communicate his desire to help further. "You want to help, don't you?" Officer Martinez chuckled, scratching Max behind the ears. "You've already done enough, buddy. But if we need you, we'll call." The minutes turned into an hour as they worked diligently. Officers scoured through footage from the nearby shops and homes, looking for any sign of the car that had dropped off the baby. Max rested by Officer Martinez's feet, his eyes alert and ears perked, ready to spring into action if necessary. Finally, a breakthrough came when Officer Jenkins called out, "I think I've found something." Everyone gathered around as he played back a video clip from a nearby convenience store. The footage showed a car pulling up to the curb, and a shadowy figure exiting the vehicle. The image was grainy, but it was enough to send chills down everyone's spine. "There. You see that?" Jenkins pointed. "That's when she was left on the porch." The officers' faces grew serious as they watched the clip. Officer Martinez's heart raced as he recognized the potential danger of the situation. "We need to find out who that is," he said, his voice steady. "Let's run the license plate and see if we can track down the owner." As they worked, Max stood up, his instincts on high alert. He felt something was brewing, a sense that danger was close. He barked softly, trying to alert the officers. "It's okay, Max," Officer Martinez reassured him. "We're on it." But Max continued to pace, sensing the weight of what was at stake. After a few more minutes of investigation, Officer Jenkins returned with a frown. "The car is registered to a woman named Clara Simmons. Looks like she has a history of issues, domestic disputes, complaints from neighbors." "Great," Officer Martinez replied, concern thickening in his voice. "Let's send a couple of units to her address. If she's the one who left the baby, we need to ensure she doesn't pose any more threats. And if you like the story, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell." As they prepared to dispatch officers, Max felt a sudden rush of energy. He had to be part of this. He stood tall, barking again, ready to follow them. Officer Martinez noticed Max's enthusiasm and smiled, realizing the dog wanted to help more than anyone else. "Okay, buddy, let's see what we can do." With Max leading the way, they headed out of the police station, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The weight of the situation hung over them, but hope flickered like a flame. Together, they would find the truth and ensure the baby was safe. Outside, the sun shone brightly, casting long shadows on the pavement. Max trotted ahead, nose to the ground, sniffing for any signs that could lead them to Clara. Officer Martinez and his team followed closely, a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling in the air. Each officer was determined to protect the innocent child and ensure that justice would be served. As they arrived at Clara's address, Max paused at the gate, ears twitching. He could sense the tension in the air, a reminder of the unknown that lay ahead. Officer Martinez placed a reassuring hand on Max's back. "You ready, buddy? Let's do this together." Max barked in response, feeling a surge of bravery. This was more than just a job, it was about protecting the innocent and standing up against injustice. As they approached the front door, Officer Martinez knocked firmly, his expression focused and serious. The door swung open, revealing a woman with disheveled hair and a wary expression. "What do you want?" she snapped, eyes narrowing. "Clara Simmons?" Officer Martinez asked, his voice calm but authoritative. "We need to ask you some questions about a baby found outside your house." Clara's demeanor shifted instantly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, trying to close the door. But Officer Martinez was quicker, stepping forward to block her. "We know you left a baby outside. We have evidence. You need to come with us," he insisted, his voice firm. Max stood by his side, growling softly, sensing the danger that Clara posed. As the confrontation unfolded, Max's heart raced. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the chance to protect the baby and bring the truth to light. And he was ready to do whatever it took. Inside the police station, the atmosphere shifted rapidly as Officer Martinez cradled the baby in his arms. Her tiny face, still pink and soft, looked up at him with wide eyes, completely unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded. The station, typically filled with the noise of phones ringing and officers chatting, was now buzzing with a sense of urgency and concern. "Let's get her checked out," Officer Martinez said, his voice firm yet gentle. He turned to a nearby officer, Officer Reed, who was already reaching for the phone to call for medical assistance. "We need a pediatrician to take a look at her, just to be safe. And let's notify Child Protective Services too." Max, still panting and watching intently from the doorway, felt a rush of pride. He had done his job, but he was also anxious. What would happen to the baby now? Would she find a good home? He could sense the tension in the air, a mixture of fear and determination among the officers. As the officers moved swiftly, Officer Martinez sat down on a nearby bench, gently placing the baby in his lap. He examined her carefully, looking for any signs of distress. She cooed softly, her tiny fingers curling and uncurling, seemingly oblivious to the serious situation around her. Martinez felt a pang in his heart. He couldn't help but think of his own children and how vulnerable they were at that age. Let's see what we have here, Officer Martinez said, gently lifting the blanket to get a better look at the baby. She was bundled up tightly, but he noticed a small silver bracelet on her wrist. It was engraved with a name, Maya. Well, at least we have a name, he murmured, sharing a small smile with Officer Reed, who had just returned from the phone call. Medical team is on the way, and they'll be here in 10 minutes, Officer Reed reported, glancing at the baby. She looks like she's been well cared for, at least recently. The mood in the station was a mixture of anxiety and cautious hope. Officers gathered around, their faces serious as they whispered among themselves, each trying to understand the mystery behind the baby's appearance. Officer Martinez felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He wanted to ensure that Maya would be safe and that whoever had left her would be held accountable. "All right, everyone, let's focus," Officer Martinez called out, trying to regain control of the situation. "We need to figure out where this baby came from. Who left her here? And why?" The room quieted down as the officers turned their attention to him, ready to assist in any way they could. Officer Sanchez, a seasoned investigator known for her keen instincts, stepped forward. "I'll check the neighborhood surveillance cameras. If we can get footage of the car that left, we might be able to identify the driver." She moved purposefully toward the evidence room, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Good idea, Sanchez," Martinez replied. "We'll need all the information we can gather. Let's also interview any nearby residents who might have seen something. I want to make sure we cover all our bases." As the officers dispersed, the tension in the room was palpable. Officer Martinez continued to cradle Maya, gently rocking her back and forth. Her warmth and innocence reminded him of why he had chosen this job, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. He whispered softly to her, "You're going to be okay, little one. We're going to find out what happened and make sure you're safe." Just then, the door swung open, and a couple of EMTs rushed in, their uniforms crisp and their faces focused. "Where's the baby?" one of them called out, glancing around the station until they spotted Martinez. "I have her right here," he said, standing up to hand Maya over. "She was found outside a house by a dog. We think she was left there, but we don't know how long she's been alone." The EMTs exchanged worried glances, their expressions serious as they took Maya into their care. "Let's get her checked out." "We'll do a full assessment," one of them said, gently examining the baby as they spoke. Officer Martinez watched closely, anxious to hear if Maya was all right. As they checked her vital signs and temperature, Officer Reed returned with a stack of papers. "I just pulled up the last few days of calls in this area. There's been a couple of reports about suspicious activity, but nothing directly related to a baby," she said, looking over at Martinez. "I'll dig deeper." "Good work, Reed." "Keep me updated," Martinez replied, grateful for her initiative. He turned back to the EMTs, who were still working with Maya. "How's she doing?" "Everything looks good so far," one EMT replied, a reassuring smile on his face. "She's healthy, just a bit hungry and confused. We'll get her fed and make sure she's stable." "Great, thank you," Martinez said, relief flooding through him. Just then, the station's front door swung open again, and a group of officers returned from interviewing residents nearby. They looked determined, and one officer held a notepad filled with notes. "We've spoken to a few neighbors," Officer Martinez reported. "They didn't see much, but one woman mentioned seeing a car parked nearby late last night. It was a dark SUV, but she didn't get the license plate." "Every detail counts," Martinez replied, feeling a renewed sense of urgency. "We need to track down that vehicle. Let's see if we can get the description to the local auto shops and repair places. Someone might have seen something." As the officers exchanged ideas, the baby began to stir in the EMT's arms, making soft cooing noises. Officer Martinez felt a warmth in his heart at the sound. "I think she knows we're here to help," he said, smiling at the baby. Suddenly, the door swung open again, and another officer rushed in, excitement written all over his face. "I think I've found something," he exclaimed, holding up a small device. I just checked the area and found a cell phone lying near the porch where the baby was found. It was turned off, but we might be able to pull data from it. Officer Martinez's heart raced. Great job. Let's see what we can recover. If we find any texts or calls, it could lead us to whoever left the baby. The team gathered around the officer, eager to see what they could uncover. Meanwhile, the EMTs finished their examination, giving Maya a small bottle to drink. Martinez couldn't help but smile at the sight. She was safe for now, but he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He wanted to ensure that whoever had done this would be brought to justice. As they examined the phone, Officer Reed leaned closer, her eyes scanning the screen. "It looks like there are some messages here," she said, excitement in her voice. "One of them is a conversation between two people. It mentions something about being caught and needing to get rid of the evidence." Officer Martinez felt a chill run down his spine. This could be big. "We need to trace these numbers immediately," he said, feeling the tension build again. "Whoever did this is still out there, and we need to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." The team sprang into action, calling the phone service provider to trace the number while monitoring Maya's needs. As they worked, the air filled with determination and resolve. They knew that every second counted in this investigation, and they were determined to get to the bottom of it. As Officer Martinez watched Maya drink her bottle, he felt a renewed sense of hope. She had been through so much, but she was a survivor. Just like the community that rallied around her, they would not rest until justice was served. Max, still sitting nearby, watched the proceedings with bright eyes. He felt proud of what he had done. In his heart, he knew that he had found a friend in need and helped her find her way to safety. As he looked around at the busy officers, he wagged his tail, ready for whatever came next. With each passing moment, the investigation deepened, and the urgency grew. Officer Martinez could feel the tension in the room. This was no ordinary case. This was about a helpless baby, and they were determined to protect her at all costs. As the officers continued to uncover clues, they knew that they were on the brink of something significant. Maya's future depended on their diligence, and they were committed to making sure that she would never be abandoned again. In the heart of the police station, a dog, a baby, and a team of dedicated officers were united in their quest for justice, each moment leading them closer to uncovering the truth. And as the investigation unfolded, everyone felt a spark of hope. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The atmosphere inside the police station buzzed with urgency. Officers hurried back and forth, their voices filled with a mixture of concern and determination. Officer Martinez held the baby in his arms, her tiny face nestled against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his protective embrace. He glanced down at her, relieved to see her peaceful expression, but his mind raced with thoughts of the danger she had faced just hours earlier. He couldn't shake. The feeling that time was of the essence. They needed to uncover the truth before it was too late. "All right, everyone," Officer Martinez called, gathering the team around him. "We need to figure out where this baby came from and who left her outside that house. Let's get to work." The officers nodded, their expressions serious. They knew the stakes were high, and the community was counting on them. "Let's start by checking any nearby security cameras," Officer Taylor suggested. "There's bound to be something on tape that could give us a lead." She was sharp and resourceful, known for her attention to detail. Officer Martinez agreed and assigned her to review the footage from the surrounding neighborhoods. While Officer Taylor set up the computer to access the cameras, the other officers gathered around to brainstorm. They discussed possible locations where the baby might have been left and if any recent reports of missing children could be connected. Officer Martinez paced the floor, glancing occasionally at the baby, who was now gently cooing, seemingly unaware of the chaos surrounding her. Max, the brave dog who had delivered the baby, sat quietly near Officer Martinez's feet. His ears perked up as he sensed the tension in the air. He could feel that everyone was worried and focused on finding answers. The bond between Max and the officers had grown stronger since he had brought the baby in, and now he felt a sense of responsibility to help in any way he could. "Okay, I've got something." Officer Taylor exclaimed, breaking the silence as she pulled up the video feed. The screen flickered to life, displaying a view of the street outside the police station. "Let's see what we have here." The officers leaned in, their eyes fixed on the screen as the footage began to play. The first few minutes of the video showed nothing unusual. Cars passed by, people walked their dogs, and the neighborhood appeared peaceful. Max's tail wagged nervously, sensing the rising anticipation in the room. Officer Martinez encouraged him, scratching behind his ears. "You did great, buddy. We're going to figure this out." Suddenly, a dark car pulled into view on the screen. The officers watched closely, and Officer Taylor paused the video, pointing to the vehicle. "That's it. That car looks suspicious. It came around the corner just before Max found the baby." The officers exchanged glances, excitement and determination igniting in their eyes. They were on the right track. "Let's rewind a bit and see if we can catch a better look at the driver," Officer Martinez instructed. As the footage rewound, tension hung in the air. The officers leaned in closer, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The video played again, and this time, they caught a glimpse of the driver. It was a woman, her face partially obscured by sunglasses. She looked anxious, glancing around as she drove. "There's something off about her," Officer Taylor said, her brow furrowed. "We need to track down this car." She quickly took notes, jotting down the license plate number visible on the screen. The officers sprang into action, mobilizing the resources they had at their disposal. "Let's run the plates and see if we can identify the owner," Officer Martinez said. He felt a surge of hope. They were getting closer to uncovering the truth. Meanwhile, the baby giggled softly, her laughter a reminder of the innocence they were fighting to protect. The sound brought a smile to Officer Martinez's face, fueling his determination. As they awaited the results of the license plate search, the officers shared their theories. "Do you think she could be involved in something more serious?" Officer Johnson asked, a note of concern in his voice. "What if this isn't just about abandoning a baby?" "Let's not jump to conclusions," Officer Martinez replied, trying to keep their focus sharp. "We need evidence before we make any assumptions. But if she abandoned the baby, we need to find out why." Finally, the computer pinged, indicating that the license plate information had come through. Officer Taylor quickly pulled up the details, her eyes scanning the screen. "It looks like the car is registered to a woman named Sarah Henderson," she reported, glancing up at the others. "She lives a few blocks away, but it seems she has a history of complaints filed against her for neglect." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "We need to pay her a visit," Officer Martinez declared, determination lacing his voice. "Max, you ready to help us solve this mystery?" The dog stood up, tail wagging, as if to say, "Let's go." The officers piled into their cruiser, with Max sitting in the back seat, excitement palpable in the air. Officer Martinez turned on the sirens, and they sped off toward Sarah's address, hearts racing with anticipation. "We're going to get to the bottom of this," he reassured everyone, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. As they arrived at Sarah's house, the mood shifted. The neighborhood seemed quiet, and the officers exchanged worried glances. They approached the door cautiously, knocking firmly but politely. A few moments passed, and then the door creaked open. A woman with disheveled hair and tired eyes stood in the doorway, looking startled. "What do you want?" she asked, defensive. Officer Martinez stepped forward, introducing himself and the team. "Ma'am, we're here to ask you some questions about a baby found outside a house earlier today." At the mention of the baby, Sarah's expression shifted. A flicker of fear crossed her face. I don't know anything about that," she stammered. The officers exchanged glances, sensing the tension in her demeanor. "Can we come in?" Officer Martinez requested gently but firmly. After a moment of hesitation, Sarah reluctantly stepped aside, allowing them entry. The officers scanned the room, noting the disarray, a stark contrast to the innocence of the baby they were trying to protect. "Where were you earlier today?" Officer Martinez asked, maintaining a calm and respectful tone. "Did you leave your home?" I was just running some errands, Sarah replied, her voice shaky. I don't remember exactly when. Can you tell us what errands you were running? Officer Johnson pressed, sensing that Sarah was holding back. The atmosphere grew heavier, and Max whined softly, sensing the tension. I went to the store to buy some groceries, Sarah said, her eyes darting around the room. I was gone for a little while. I didn't see any baby. Her defensiveness only heightened the officer's suspicions. Officer Taylor stepped forward, trying to put Sarah at ease. We just want to make sure the baby is safe. If you know anything about her, please tell us. It could really help. I swear, I didn't do anything. Sarah exclaimed, her voice rising. I don't know how she got there. I'm not involved. Officer Martinez observed her closely, looking for any signs of truth in her words. Something felt off, and he could sense that Sarah was scared. Let's check the rest of the house, Officer Martinez decided, leading the way. They moved through the cluttered rooms, searching for any clues that could connect Sarah to the abandoned baby. In the corner of the living room, Officer Taylor noticed a small pink blanket crumpled on the floor. Her heart raced as she recognized it. It looked strikingly similar to the one the baby had been wrapped in. Sarah, can you explain this blanket? Officer Taylor asked, holding it up. The color drained from Sarah's face, and she stammered, I found that somewhere. It's not mine. Where exactly did you find it? Officer Martinez questioned, stepping closer. You need to be honest with us. Please, Sarah pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. I don't want any trouble. I just didn't want anyone to think I was a bad mother. The officers exchanged glances, realizing the weight of her words. Are you saying you have a child? Officer Johnson asked cautiously. If you do, you need to tell us where she is. I don't have her anymore, Sarah admitted, tears welling in her eyes. I couldn't take care of her. I thought someone else would find her, someone better. The officers listened intently as Sarah broke down, revealing her struggles with motherhood and her inability to care for her child. The tension in the room shifted, and they understood that the situation was more complex than they had initially thought. We need to make sure the baby is safe and get her the help she needs, Officer Martinez said gently. But you must cooperate with us, Sarah. We're here to help, not to punish. As Sarah nodded, the atmosphere began to lighten slightly. Max, sensing the change, approached Sarah, resting his head against her leg, as if offering comfort. In that moment, the officers recognized the importance of compassion in their work. They were not only law enforcement officers, they were part of a larger community that needed healing and understanding. As the investigation unfolded, they were determined to ensure the baby would receive the care and love she deserved. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the police station as the investigation wrapped up. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and relief. Max, the scruffy dog who had unexpectedly become a hero, sat patiently at the entrance, his tail wagging as he awaited the next chapter of this incredible day. Officer Martinez had taken great care of the baby, wrapping her in a soft, warm blanket, but the journey was far from over. With every passing minute, the station filled with officers sharing their thoughts on what had transpired. The news of Max's remarkable discovery spread like wildfire. Fellow officers were eager to thank him for his bravery, and they crowded around him, their voices a mix of admiration and disbelief. Max soaked up the attention, feeling proud of what he had accomplished. In his doggy heart, he understood that something important had happened today. Hey, buddy, Officer Martinez said, kneeling down to Max's level. You did a great job. You saved that little girl. He scratched behind Max's ears, and the dog leaned into the gentle touch, feeling a swell of joy. The warmth of recognition filled him, and he barked happily, wagging his tail even more vigorously. Max could sense the shift in the air, people were grateful, and he had played a significant part in it. Meanwhile, inside the station, officers worked diligently to gather information about the abandoned baby. They had managed to locate her mother through the car's registration from the surveillance footage. Officer Martinez's expression grew serious as he discussed the situation with his colleagues. "We need to ensure that this little girl is placed in a safe environment," he insisted. "We can't let her go back to a home where she's not wanted." As the officers prepared to make their move, Max watched with keen interest. The commotion around him felt like a whirlwind, but he remained focused on the baby's well-being. The little girl, who had been so helpless just hours earlier, now cooed softly, her innocent eyes gazing up at Officer Martinez. It was a heartwarming sight that melted everyone's hearts. Just then, the door swung open, and the mayor of the town entered, his expression a mix of concern and urgency. Mayor Johnson had heard about the incident and rushed over to express his gratitude. "What happened here today?" he asked, looking around at the gathered officers and then at Max, who was now basking in the spotlight. "Mayor Johnson, you won't believe it," Officer Martinez began, his voice filled with excitement. "This dog, Max, found a baby outside a house and brought her straight to us. Thanks to him, we're on our way to ensuring she gets the care she needs." The mayor's eyes widened as he knelt to look Max in the face. "You're a hero, aren't you, buddy?" he said, extending a hand to pet the dog. Max responded by leaning in closer, eager for the affection. He loved this part, being recognized for his efforts. "Now, about the baby," Mayor Johnson continued, his tone turning serious again. "What's the plan for her?" The officers quickly filled him in on the details, explaining how they had traced the baby's mother and were working to ensure that the child would be safe. The mayor nodded thoughtfully, clearly relieved that steps were being taken to protect the little girl. "Let's make sure she gets placed in a good foster home if her mother is unfit," he suggested. "We can't let her go back into a harmful environment. We need to do right by this child." The officers nodded in agreement, knowing that the mayor's heart was in the right place. They were all determined to make sure the baby's future would be brighter than her past. Max watched intently as the adults spoke about important things. He didn't fully understand the complexities of the situation, but he sensed the weight of their words. The baby had been alone and scared, but now she had people who cared. He had done his job, and it felt good to know that he had made a difference. As they discussed the next steps, a local news reporter arrived, eager to cover the heartwarming story. "Can I get an interview with the dog?" she asked playfully, looking at Max with wide eyes. "I think our viewers will love to hear from their four-legged hero." Max's ears perked up at the sound of her cheerful voice. He loved being the center of attention. Officer Martinez chuckled and nodded. "Sure, but you might have to chase him around a bit. He's a busy guy." The reporter laughed, and soon she was kneeling down beside Max, microphone in hand. "So, Max, how do you feel about finding the baby and bringing her to the police?" she asked, her tone light and encouraging. Max, of course, didn't know how to respond in words, but he tilted his head to the side, giving her his best puppy dog eyes. The reporter cooed, "What a sweet boy. I think he's just happy to help." While Max basked in the media attention, Officer Martinez stepped away to speak with his fellow officers about the next course of action. They discussed the details of contacting Child Protective Services to ensure the baby would be placed in a safe environment while they dealt with the mother. The mood was hopeful, yet serious, as everyone recognized the importance of their roles in the unfolding situation. With Max now the unofficial star of the show, people started gathering around the police station. Neighbors had heard the news and came to show their support. Children ran up to Max, wanting to pet him and give him treats. The officers took a moment to appreciate how the community had rallied together around a cause that mattered. "This is what it's all about," Officer Martinez said, smiling at the crowd. "When we work together, we can make a difference. Max here reminds us that heroes come in all shapes and sizes." The crowd cheered, their spirits high as they embraced the feel-good story of the day. As the sun began to set, casting a beautiful glow across the sky, the mayor announced that he would host a small gathering in honor of Max. "We'll have a celebration to recognize not just our furry hero, but also the teamwork and compassion that brought us together today," he declared. The crowd erupted into applause, excitement bubbling over. Max wagged his tail furiously, picking up on the joy around him. He loved being around people, and this was the perfect way to cap off an incredible day. He felt a sense of belonging, knowing he had played a part in something bigger than himself. Later that evening, as the gathering kicked off, families arrived with food and refreshments. Max found himself in the center of attention, receiving pets and treats from everyone. Officer Martinez and his colleagues took turns sharing stories about the day, making sure to highlight Max's crucial role. "Without Max, who knows what might have happened," one officer remarked. "He acted on instinct and saved a life." Everyone nodded, understanding the truth in those words. Max's actions had been brave and selfless, proving that even the smallest creature could make a big difference. As the sun dipped below the horizon, laughter and joy filled the air. And if you like the story, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Children played games, while adults shared stories about their own pets. Max trotted around, soaking up the love and admiration, knowing he had done something good. In a quiet moment, Officer Martinez sat down beside Max, who had finally plopped down, exhausted but happy. "You know, Max," he said softly, scratching the dog's head, "you've changed lives today. That baby has a chance at a better future because of you. I hope you realize how special that is." Max looked up at him, feeling a warmth in his chest. He understood the love behind those words, even if he couldn't express it in return. As the celebration continued, the night air filled with the sounds of joy and camaraderie. People laughed and shared stories of Max's heroics. A local bakery even donated a cake shaped like a dog, dedicated to Max's bravery. "To our hero," they cheered, raising their glasses in celebration. Max felt proud and cherished, and he knew he would always remember this day. It was a reminder that kindness and bravery could come from the most unexpected places. As the night wound down, he lay in a patch of grass, looking up at the stars twinkling above, feeling grateful for the adventure that had unfolded. In the end, Max had not only found a baby, he had united a community. The bonds formed today would last long after the celebration ended, and he knew that as long as he had people who cared for him, he would always have a place to belong. And if you like the story, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell.